Welcome everyone to Gather Together. This is the annual fundraiser for Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay. And for the second year in a row, we've had to pivot to virtual. So given the circumstances, we are particularly grateful for everybody's participation. I'm Sally Fitzhugh. I want to take a moment to introduce myself. I am the most recent addition to the RTO board. I actually signed on just unbeknownst to me a few days before the COVID lockdown. So let's just say the last year and a half has been a tumultuous time for RTO and everybody else, and an unconventional start to my board stint. While I haven't actually been in a board meeting room with my fellow board members, I am nonetheless very happy to have joined the team. So the board role isn't the only way that I've become familiar with RTO. Actually, many years ago, I volunteered for a project where we painted and re-landscaped a shelter for women, battered women. And that's where I first got hooked. Then my two sons went through high school at Head Royce and participated actively in a very cool project they have each year of student-run, student-driven annual organization culminating in RTO build. I saw firsthand how impactful that was for the high schoolers. And I was actually an employee at RTO when Lisa Malol, our current executive director, joined the organization. So I've seen RTO from many different angles, and I am very fond of the organization and what it stands for. Not only does RTO provide a crucial lifeline to many clients who might not otherwise be able to safely stay in their homes, but its process allows for a disparate community to come together, from the clients to the volunteers, from unskilled laborers like myself to master craftsmen, young, old, male, female, anything in between, for a common goal to improve the lives of one family, make a home, one home at a time safer, and in the process, make Oakland East Bay a better community for all of us to live. Anyhow, that's my story, and I wanted to now tell you about our program today. For the next hour or so, we have a robust program. You'll be hearing from our keynote speaker, Mitchell Schwarzer, author of Hellatown. It's a unique history of Oakland, in conversation with Lisa. You'll also be hearing from Oakland's own mayor, Libby Schaaf. And finally, we will meet the recipients of this year's RTO awards. Ruth STROUP of Farmers Insurance is our champion honoree. Ken Kuhn and Steve Hamm will receive Aspire Awards for their dedicated volunteer service. And let me point out, while the conversations take place, pay attention to the chat button. It's an opportunity for you to pose questions, see comments, and make those will also be seen by the hosts and will make for a more interactive conversation. So as you can see, we have a lot to cover. And before we dive in, I want to take a step back and remind you that this is a fundraising event. We hope that you will dig deeply, give generously, whatever amount that might be online today. And while you're online, take a look at our online auction, which closes at 5 p.m. We have a variety of compelling items to bid on, including my husband's own New Orleans style Cajun gumbo poker party for a fun evening for the 6 top bidders. A 5-night fly fishing getaway to the Lassen area, and a variety of other fun vacation ideas. So please go online, donate, place a bid, and in the meantime, sit back and enjoy the conversation. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our next speaker, Chad Grant, an enthusiastic supporter of RTO and a fellow board member. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Sally. Hi, everybody. My name is Chad Grant, and I've actually lived in the Bay Area my entire life. I was raised by a single mother in affordable housing, so I know firsthand how significant providing a family with the roof over their head is. As I've started to become successful in my career, I realized it was not just about me anymore, but what I can do to help others. After my first couple projects with Rebuilding Together, it was immediately clear on how impactful one project could be on an individual family and an entire community. Whether hosting a volunteer team, sponsoring an event like today, or through employer matching, you are a stabilizing force as we work to keep folks in their homes and off the streets. So it is my honor to give a special thank you to our sponsors of today's Gather Together fundraiser to support our work. We honestly would not be able to do all this wonderful work without you all. I would first like to thank Dan Kolb, City of Oakland Council Member District 1, for placing $75,000 in the budget that was passed by the entire Oakland City Council to go toward low-income senior homeowners so that they can remain safe and healthy in their homes. Next, I would like to thank the Bolt Company, Shorenstein Partners, Heritage Bank, Alton Construction, Mendoza Roofing, UCSF Benyas Children's Hospital, and Ideal Restoration. I would also like to give a very special thank you to our partners Renewal by Anderson, DPR Construction, and Ideal Restoration, who have collectively donated over $120,000 of in-kind work and materials over the past 90 days alone. In-kind contributions have an exponential impact on the ground in our communities. It allows us to accomplish things that typical unskilled volunteers like myself couldn't ever do. And then last but not least, to our Champion Award honoree, Ruth STROUP, for her continuing support for Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay Roof Repairs Campaign. So thank you all to all our sponsors. And I wanted to close this out with a quote that really registers with myself when I'm thinking about Rebuilding Together. It says, community is much more than belonging. Community is much more than belonging to something. It's about doing something together that makes belonging matter. And with that, I just want to thank everybody once again. And I believe we will be having another video here shortly. So thank you guys.
Me and my wife met at the post office down on 7th Street. And we've been living in this neighborhood since March of 1984. Spent 6 months in Vietnam in the U.S. Army. I grew up a lot over in Vietnam. It gives you the value of how precious life is. We have limited financial availability, so we thought it was a very good program to help us out in making some repairs on the home.
We needed like the bathroom bars, safety bars, and we needed we needed a commode repaired, and we needed a water shower repairments. One of the just got fixed recently.
Yeah, we had mold in certain areas in the bathroom that needed to be taken care of and needed to be repaired. And
the ceiling, what happened is we had no air circulation in there,
ventilation.
So the ceiling is really messed up. The work that they're doing for us is not affecting us because we're home anyway. We can't go any place. Yeah. So we're home anyway. So it's giving us a little company too.
It's been a good experience. Very, very, very enlightening. Very hospitable.
Everybody's so friendly. The benefit I receive from this is just knowing that this window is fixed now. And just knowing that these things are being done give us a better attitude. Mm-hmm. Made us feel better about being in the home and everything. So it has made a huge different type of feelings the way we feel about things.
Financially, we weren't in a position to have the work done. So by it being taken care of and done for free, that's a big boost, big morale builder.
What I'm looking forward to when all this work's done is getting my house fixed up nice and neatly so we can just relax in our home and don't worry about the leaks or whatever, you know, and be at peace. Yeah. It's bringing peace in the home to us.
I thank God for Rebuilding Together Oakland. It's been such a blessing to us. It has fulfilled our needs of making repairs that we weren't physically able to do and also didn't have the funds to do it. So it's been a blessing.
Listening to Mr. and Mrs. Henderson there really kind of reminds me of why working with Rebuilding Together Oakland is truly so special. My name's Jeff Schofield, and I've been volunteering with Rebuilding Together Oakland for over 20 years with my colleagues at Pulte Homes. And about 4 years ago was invited to be a board member, which I'm very proud of. Each year, we help probably about 120 homeowners with various home projects. Earlier this year, we did about 100 home previews, and we did about the same number last year, where we go out to people's homes. We have a checklist that helps us assess the various safety features that we're looking for and really try to figure out which of these people we think that we could help and what volunteer organizations might be the best fit for each of these. Those homes are in Oakland, in Hayward, San Leandro, and unincorporated parts of Alameda County. Our staff of 3 at Rebuilding Together Oakland is mighty, but it is truly the volunteers that make this work. A huge thank you to our company partners, event sponsors, individual volunteers and donors. I think what I appreciate most about Rebuilding Together Oakland is that there are so many people who are in need of dignified and safe housing. And there are so many people who want to do something about it. But without Rebuilding Together Oakland, those 2 groups of people never get connected with each other. And so I really see Rebuilding Together Oakland as the conduit between people who need help and are brave enough to ask for it, and people who really want to help. As you listen to each of us talk and the various videos, I hope that you will notice that we do have links scrolling across the chat where you can donate, you can volunteer. We have a silent auction with great getaways. The silent auction closes at 5 o'clock. As Chad pointed out earlier, a special thank you to companies like Renewal by Anderson, DPR Construction, Ideal Restoration, to have over $115,000 in in-kind donations. It's an impressive dollar amount, but it's even more impressive when you think about what things that accomplishes. That's broken concrete steps, broken concrete stairways replaced, wood for fencing, replacement of over 20 windows. The amount of work that these folks have been able to accomplish and the quality of people that are actually helped by these sort of donations are truly inspiring. I think when you listen to the Hendersons talk there, it can't help but tug on your heartstrings. I recall working on a project a few years back for a 78-year-old Navy veteran named Bobby McKenzie. And, we completely renovated his house. He had gotten to the point where he couldn't really take care of it anymore. It was in extremely bad shape. We worked on it for about 2 weeks, culminating with a huge volunteer event. And after it was over and everybody left, a woman from across the street came over and just commented how great the house looked. And Bobby invited her in and showed her around. And when she left, she stopped me in the street and said, Bobby hasn't invited me into his house in over 10 years because he was embarrassed about what had become of it. But because of Rebuilding Together Oakland and because of what you and your teammates have done, he's obviously proud. It's moments like that that really make me want to give more of myself and to thank people like you guys who are also doing those things. My strongest connection to Rebuilding Together Oakland has always been the projects that we do for individual homeowners. And I'm proud to say that this year, for the very first time, we actually did a board house where our staff and board of directors rolled up our sleeves, got out there, got dirty, actually did the work ourselves, built a greater sense of team, and helped a woman named Mrs. Villalobos and her son. And so let's go ahead and hear a few words from Mrs. Villalobos right now.
My name is Norma Villalobos. I bought this house 2 years ago, and my son, Abraham, is autistic. He's 46 years old. He was very afraid to go downstairs, Abraham, the stairs, because no rails before, and the porch was very insecure. Now it's very easy for Abraham to get out of the house, and now he's coming out to the backyard. Rebuilding Together Oakland was a dream I could have done by myself. It's impossible. And I have them here with so much love and dedication and courage. And I am so grateful for all the love and the effort they made, all of them. When I saw them in the front of the house and Lucy was telling them what they need to do, then I see them working in the back porch and people cutting grass. It was so beautiful, you know. And when they finish, I feeling so pleased when I coming out in the mornings. I do to have my cup of coffee over here, and I see it and I can't believe it. I am so grateful for this experience every day. Every day, I'm very grateful to each one of them and to Rebuilding Together of Oakland.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What an amazing story. And I just feel like I know Mrs. Villalobos and their son, Abraham. Hi, everyone. I'm Lillian Chung, and I'm the Director of Business Development for the Bolt Company. And I just feel so fortunate because it was really through my role here at this company that I had the pleasure of witnessing the powerful work of Rebuilding Together Oakland, East Bay. And just this past summer, my colleague Ken Humphrey and I, we were invited to attend this kickoff of Rebuilding Together's project that they were partnering up with the UCSF Benioff Hospital. It was so impressive because Benioff Children's Hospital, they organized themselves and they had 84 dedicated hospital volunteers. And truly, you know, I was out there and talking to some of these volunteers and their doctors and nurses, my goodness, as if the pandemic hasn't asked more of them. And of course, it was all really meaningful to see Matt Cook, their fearless CEO, out there as well. And in that one day, through their hard work and sweat, they fixed up 8 houses in a single day. And in my mind, that is so huge and really inspiring. I get excited when I can clear out the toilet, you know, after it's like all whatever, backed up and such. So, you know, that's amazing to see that. So really, I would say from that moment, I didn't mean to, but I think you can call it cyber stalking. I was cyber stalking Lisa Malul. She's the executive director for Rebuilding Together. And it was just something because I wanted to learn more. And so she and I have been talking just to finding out how my company can be more of a participant. And truly, you know, today's event is a testament to the dedication of this organization. Lisa and her team, they have been planning this wonderful event for the sake of raising funds to help their neighbors prepare for the wet weather ahead, to repair roofs. And so in part, you know, with everyone talking about the link, please take a look at the link in the auction, make good use of it, right? It's just any little amount that you can contribute would be a huge help. For any of you who might have a honey to-do list, I think you can understand how much energy and dedication and focus you need to get through that list. So, you know, this level of passion is really beautifully exhibited by RUTH STROUP. She is who we're honoring today. She's a champion. And, you know, in this moment in time, normally we would have everyone applauding for Ruth, but we're in a virtual world. So we would like to honor you, Ruth, through this video. Thank you so much for all you do.
As the mayor of Oakland, it is such an honor to introduce this year's recipient of the Champion Award for Rebuilding Together Oakland. You've seen that Mini driving around that says the insurance lady. You can't miss her bright red hair. And she's so much more than an insurance agent. And full disclosure, she's my insurance agent. But she is a chef. She donates like incredible meals to just about every school auction in town. She's so much more than a beloved small business owner in Oakland. She's the person that actually has been a thought partner behind the visionary roof repair program that Rebuilding Together has driven for the last 2 years, and she has personally donated $30,000 over the last 2 years to make keeping the roof over our heads a success. We all love and adore you, our insurance lady, Ruth STROUP.
Oh my gosh, what a treat. What a treat. So I asked everybody, we're sitting here together. My name's Ruth, but really we always just raise the roof, you know? So everybody move a little in your chair. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to work with Rebuilding Together. I remember years ago, I came to the wine auctions and love, because I love cooking, I also have a deep love of wine and got to know Rebuilding Together through Bell Investment Advisors and all their support. And Bonnie Bell, who we all remember so well for her generosity in the community. When Lisa came on board, she invited me to coffee. And, coffee is one of the most expensive beverages in my life. It turns out to be where people ask me to get involved. But this coffee was extra special because I told Lisa I had a dream of being able to get roofs on more repair roofs in Oakland. And the reason for that is, as an insurance agent, one of the number one reasons I can't insure a house is because the roof is too old and is too damaged. And so I drive around Oakland in my little smart car. You can come with me all the time and anytime you want and see all the roofs. I see Oakland as the roofs, and a lot of them need repair. And so I told Lisa I wanted to find a way to make roof repair something that I focused on during my years as an insurance agent for Farmers Insurance in Oakland. Last year, we had a very special program at Farmers during COVID where farmers would do a major match of our donations. So it was with great pleasure that I called Lisa and I said, Lisa, I have the opportunity to give even more than I could usually give, and made a commitment, and farmers matched me. So it was just huge. When I talk about giving, I think of every day as a great day to give, but today it's so amazing to be recognized. I would love to have you guys take a minute and it's my job to introduce the Sandoval story. Mr. Sandoval had one of the least desirable roofs that you can have in our business, the wood shake roof, and his was about 50 years old, I can tell from just looking at it. So at this point, I invite you all, I thank you all for your generous recognition, and I invite you to watch Mr. Sandoval and hear a little bit about what he has to say.
My name is Jorge Sandoval. I live here since 1992 with my family. I realized I have a problem with a roof 5 years ago, especially whenever it rains so hard. And we have leaks all over the house. In this area, this is the second house who has this type of roof. The city doesn't allow no more this type of roof. I need the help to have a new roof. I applied to the program, the Alameda County, but unfortunately, because I was payment behind on my mortgage, I was rejected. I didn't qualify. I knew about Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay, and I applied with them. And fortunately, they approved me. And my experience with Rebuilding Together is been wonderful. Wonderful administration, wonderful people to help us. And now I understand, how miracles happen. This is a real miracle for me and my wife.
What I love most about my job are the homeowners, but what I love the most are the volunteers. I have the honor and pleasure to introduce to you the Aspire our amazing commitment to our organization, our community, and our elderly homeowners. These two wonderful souls that have been volunteering with us for the past 14 years, whether it be in the field or helping us in the office. They're always happy to help in any way they can. Here's Ken Kuhn and Stephen Hamm.
My name is Ken Kuhn, and I really don't know how long I've been doing this. It seems like the days just fly away. And I first started doing this, I was sharing an office with RTO, and they came up and asked me if I'd give them a hand. They asked me what I could do. I said I could do everything. There's a lot of things I can't do, but when it comes to buildings, I'm pretty handy. And I've been doing Safe at Home for Rebuilding Together Oakland. The reason I do it, gratitude, gives me a feeling of giving back to the community. These people are so grateful that we're fixing up their house. And a lot of this stuff could save their life. As simple as it sounds, you get a fire extinguisher or a smoke detector, that could save somebody's life. And basically, I do this stuff because I can make somebody's life safer. Well, one of the things I've been putting in ramps and new stairs and stuff, and enabling them to get out of their house, to go to church, to go to the grocery store, things that people take for granted. Keeps me active. I have Parkinson's disease, and getting around isn't that easy sometimes. The disease is increased, and it gets tougher every day. But it's all good when I see smiling on people's face. Just chokes you up. Thank you for the opportunity.
My name's Stephen Hamm. I started Rebuilding Together Oakland. We were sharing an office with them for Pacific Cannery Lofts, a West Oakland job. And it was Cannon Constructors was sharing the office with them. And they had a project they wanted to do over the weekend. And we had a whole bunch of guys that, we put out a flyer on a job site, said, hey, we could use a couple, electricians or HVAC guys or, whatever, a couple carpenters, a couple laborers to go help out. We did it. And the first time I got hooked. It was really, a lot of gratitude. And I felt really, like I gave back. And the lady was really, overwhelmed with what we did. And she started crying. And, that's from there. I've been doing it. So I think I'm on like 13, 14 years. A lot of gratitude and feel, just a sense of giving back to somebody that really appreciates, that doesn't have the means or, what I mean? I mean, we build $80 million buildings, so, there's nothing that we really can't handle. It's a good sense of giving back. And, I'm thankful that I'm able to do it. And, I've seen a lot of other young kids out there and they're volunteering their time. And hopefully they continue to do that, because people are, getting old and not gonna be able to do this forever. If we can continue to, get younger people involved and, thank God we got good sponsors and the people that donate and stuff, you got to give them a shout out. So
what's your favorite part of doing the volunteer work?
Just the people, seeing them at the end of the day, at the end of the weekend, or sometimes it's a 2-weekend job. The first lady I did, she didn't have hot water for like 4 years. And she said, you're going to have to call the fire department to get me out of the bathtub. So that's really, that touches you a little bit. So, that's why right there.
Steve said the lady's name was Mrs. Park, and she was the very first job we did. And it just caught my heart. How a woman could be living out here with one burner for heating her whole house. And we got our new washing machine, new refrigerator, got our new insides.
New oven. Bathtub, everything.
What's it like working with Ken?
He's great. I love working with him. Been doing it my whole life, so couldn't ask for anybody better and a better teacher. He's extremely thoughtful and punctual and cares about everybody, and goes above and beyond to make sure everybody's taken care of. And, it's a good role model. I think he'll keep going until he can't anymore. It's just he'll just keep going. It's just him. So it's a good trait.
Thank you.
As far as like trying to inspire younger people and just anybody to help, you never know what your neighbor has or how they're living. You know what I mean? It's just, like the same lady that had didn't have hot water for, 2 years, only had one source of heat in her house. And she lived on 98th Avenue in Oakland, and she didn't have any locks. And there was one burner in her stove that worked. That was it. you know, just to have her be able to cook again. And she didn't have any heat in her house, and, you know, no locking doors, stuff like that. You never know how your neighbor's living, you know, and go say hi to them, you know, and check on them every once in a while. I mean, you know, it's kind of cold that none of her neighbors knew that, you know, or they could have helped out, you know what I mean? But just, I'm glad that I'm a part of this program, and I you know, I'm able to help and give back, and I get the gratitude and just a sensation and a feeling of accomplishment, you know, and I'm happy at the end of the day, you know, so it brings joy. You know, I wouldn't do it for this long if I didn't, you know, so, and I'm pretty sure that everybody else that does it feels exactly the same way. I mean, if it gets you, you know, so hopefully it gets a lot more people.
Wow. Ken and Steve, thank you. They spoke so well about rebuilding together Oakland East Bay, and they really captured what makes me feel so passionate about this organization and its mission. My name is Mark Epstein. I've been volunteering for Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay probably for close to 12 years now. First as part of, alongside my colleagues here at the law firm of Wendell Rosen in Oakland, sponsoring and participating in home improvement projects. And then for the last 3.5 years or so, I've had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for Rebuilding Together Oakland. Rebuilding Together Oakland has always been important to me because I have lived in the East Bay for most of my life, and it's a community that I care deeply about. We know that there's long been a lack of affordable housing in Oakland and the greater East Bay, but as we also know, in the last maybe 5 years or so, it has truly grown to epic proportions, the problem. Part of the solution, of course, is the need to build more new affordable housing, but a big part of the problem is also enabling existing homeowners to remain in their homes. With the cost of living in the Bay Area growing as it has, a lot of people are on the brink of losing their home ownership, losing their homes, and those who can stay, many of them can't afford to maintain them in reasonably good condition. There are a number of homes where they have grown to such a state of disrepair that they are health and safety hazards. And that's where Rebuilding Together Oakland comes in. Our organization, as you know, makes repairs, corrects safety problems, broken stairs, broken floorboards, placing of handrails where they're needed, placing of ramps for people who are disabled and can't use their steps, and so forth. And it's those types of activities that enable people to remain not just in their homes, but in homes that are of decent living quality. And everybody deserves the dignity of having decent living conditions. So RTO, Rebuilding Together Oakland, really does speak to me. As I listen to Ken and Stephen talk, it reminds me of some of the Rebuilding Together Oakland home improvement projects that I've taken part in over the years. And it really is a good feeling to be able to make a noticeable, palpable difference in someone's lives and see the smile on their face when you help fix a problem they've been living with for quite some time. I think our champion awardee, Ruth STROUP, said it earlier, every day is a good day to donate to Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay. And with that, I'd like to remind everybody that links will pop up in the chat box as they are right now. And as we move through the program today, there's both a donation link and an auction link. I would encourage everybody to donate if they can and participate in the auction if you can. It's a fun way of also contributing. Please get to know Rebuilding Together Oakland. I think you'll be glad you did. Now it's my pleasure to open the floor to our board member emeritus, Donald Deshotels.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you taking over the board when I departed. Happy our paths crossed today. Super excited to be here today. I appreciate everyone coming out. It is in the middle of the day, and it took an effort for us to get away from our daily lives to come learn about Rebuilding Together. I love being on the board, and I'm actually here because of Sally. I was up and coming in my career, and I said I wanted to give back, and she said, you should go talk to Lisa, so I did. I had to leave the board because I became a father. I have 2 little ones under 4 now. They're amazing, they're handsome, and hopefully I'm training them to give back to the community. So you've heard from Steve and Ken about how we serve seniors and vulnerable people, making it possible for them to have healthy and safe homes to live in. Jeff spoke about our impact and data points. We showed impact with pictures and videos and the impact our volunteers are having. You've met Mr. and Miss H, Miss V and her son, Abraham, and dear Mr. Sandoval. As people have said, keeping people in their homes they already own is what we do. It helps to reduce the need for housing assistance from an already strained system. I've been reflecting on the word help lately. It's often characterized as a sign of weakness. It's been since 2011, I've just now had the opportunity or the ability to even speak these words I'm about to tell you. In 2011, I believed that I didn't need help, or I believed I needed help, and I was too ashamed and too proud to ask. So I suffered in silence. I was what you would call the working poor. I worked in San Francisco at my buddy Eddie's law firm. I worked at Papa John's Pizza in Newark, California at night, all while trying to go to school online to obtain my paralegal certificate to do some good. I was in a toxic relationship, and for my safety, I needed to move out. I didn't have anywhere to go because I was too proud to tell my friends and family members that I needed help. So I chose to live out of my 2002 Chevy Tahoe for just over a month. I stored my few belongings at a public self-storage, took showers at 24 Hour Fitness. I had my mail routed to a PO box in Union City. I put everything behind me and put on my mask and told everyone everything was fine and went about my days. Then the greatest thing ever happened. I ruptured my patellar tendon playing basketball. Imagine that. Just so happens my buddy Eddie said, hey man, you should come live with me. You're living by yourself. He didn't know I was sleeping in my car. And as such, he didn't know that he just gave me what I needed to get back on my feet. After 6 months and not having to ask, he let me stay with him. I saved up enough money so that I could move out on my own, get my own apartment, and start my career at First Republic, which brings us to 2021. I'm not sharing the story for sentiment. I'm sharing the story because I know firsthand there are people working hard every day and barely making it, and all they need is a little help. And some of these people are too proud, like I was, to ask, so they suffer in silence. Each person RTO works with has taken the humble and courageous first step of asking for help. It is because they ask that we can offer to do what we can to serve. We help keep seniors, persons with disabilities, and low-income individuals in their homes and aging in place. As many have said in the chat, you'll see a link to our website. You can learn more about how to get involved with Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay. You can donate, you can volunteer, you can refer a family member or a friend who is living in an impossible circumstance in the home that they own with endless deferred maintenance, or those who need grab bars or handrails. Send them to us for help. Or you can reach out to us if you need help. The pride of homeownership is real, and we ask that you help us keep the pride going for as many people as possible. We can't do it alone, so we need you. The great Maya Angelou once said, okay, maybe more than once, when we give cheerfully and accept gratefully, everyone is blessed. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out. And Lisa, you have the floor.
Wow, Donald. I think you can all see why when Donald left our board, I was like tragically upset because he really personifies in so many ways what we do. But we love you, Donald, and we want you to come back. And thank you. And thank you for sharing your story. I know we spoke about it. It's you're just a very special person, and that you're willing to share that is testament to you. And we're so glad for how far you've come, and can't imagine what you're going to do in the future. For myself, I started with Rebuilding Together after working in the international community. I was working in the area of early education and on peace building with young children. And it was really special work, but it did keep me a little bit elevated, away from seeing what was actually happening on the ground. And that's really why I joined Rebuilding Together Oakland, was to actually see the impact, see that person-to-person connection that would be happening all the time. And so and it's just been so special. Really, really important for you to know that you heard from a couple of homeowners today, but just imagine that we receive hundreds of applications every year, and we're able to serve, something between 100 or 127 people, each year because of how, what the costs are to actually do that. And it's because of, all of you, for people like you who either support our organization with donations, with enthusiasm, sharing information with your friends, coming out and volunteering. All of those things are the only way that we could be doing what we're doing here. And so there's so much of a direct connection, because what you see is really about you, and it's about what you've achieved and what you've accomplished. My team here, Lucy Genova and Sonia Barragan, are two of the most incredible people I have ever known. You see the passion, you see sometimes the heartache if we can't help, well, how can we? What can we do? There's just there's no bridge too far for either of them. And you've also heard from many of my board members here tonight, or this afternoon. It's so special, each one of them. And I've never been more proud to be part of such a beautiful and heartful, dynamic organization. Every day, not every day, but almost every day, each of you is making my day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I just have to say, Mitchell, finally, we are all just waiting to hear from you. And so I want to introduce Mitchell. He is the author of this brand new book, hot off the presses, Hellatown. And he, in his day-to-day life, he is the professor of architecture and urban history at California College for the Arts. I also just, before Mitchell and I start our conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to Darren Ranaletti from the City of Oakland Mayor's Office. He is the person who said, this guy, Mitchell Schwarzer, wrote this great book, and I read it. It is a great book. It's a great read. So thank you so much, Mitchell, and thank you for being here with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And Mitchell's he's been wonderful to talk with as we've been prepping for this. So Mitchell, I just want to start with, your book has been hailed as the unofficial biography of the city of Oakland. So tell us about what inspired you to write Hellatown and why the subtitle of Development and Disruption.
Well, I think grew up in another city that had development and disruption, New York City, a little bit different than Oakland, as you must all know. I grew up watching these amazing projects go up in New York, the Verrazzano Bridge, all the highways, a lot of the Robert Moses inspired development. This was in the 1960s. And then in the 70s, I watched New York kind of fall apart in a lot of ways. I was there for the blackout, and I was actually caught somewhere during the riots in Brooklyn in 1977. And so I watched the city, rise up and then fall down. And then since then, New York has come back again and fallen and come back. And I've been living in Oakland on and off since 1981. And bought a house here 20 years ago. And I got interested, I'm interested typically in where I live and the place I'm at. So I started researching Oakland, wrote a couple of articles about City Center and about Jack London Square, and then looked at the kind of literature on Oakland and felt there was a need for a larger history of how Oakland, the physical environment, the built environment came about, came undone, came back. And so that was the genesis for the book. I chose the subtitle, Development and Disruption, because, urban development always brings forth disruption. It always means adding something. And when you add something, you usually have to take something else away. or change something, and it often involves taking things away, period. So I think I wanted to look at how, in light of my experience, my life experiences, I wanted to look at how development in Oakland, the building of the city, how it actually occurs, who were the kind of people behind it, what were the forces that opposed it, what were the kind of disruptions that occurred to the existing city, to the existing society that happened in any given period in time. They were much greater. I think that both the development and the disruption was really extreme mid-century, from the period right after the Second World War up through the 1970s. Since then, things have been less intense on some levels, but there is a lot of development today, but it's of a narrower sort, mostly market rate housing and some commercial market rate commercial development with a little bit of affordable housing development. We're not seeing the kind of transportation projects, the civic projects, the public housing, the shopping complexes. We're not seeing that kind of development right now. So that's the genesis of the subtitle.
Oh, thank you. It's really interesting to hear about, sort of the background and how your mind works about all of those things. One of the things that I like language a lot, and you talked about the idea of place and about in California it being a verb and not a noun. Given the comments, what you've been saying about New York, which is where I'm originally from, and we talk about, Robert Moses and talk about all the different things that happened out there, even with the give and take or the ebb and flow of the city of Oakland, you still call Oakland a great American city. So tell us about why we are a great city.
I think if you judge cities by, the time, like I said earlier, if you look at the fact that they rise and decline, and Oakland's decline was pretty intense, I think from, very trumpeted in the media from the 60s through the beginning of the 21st century. I know when people visited us, they would come, typical people would come from out of town and they'd say, "Oh my God, it's so nice here. I thought it was a hellhole." That's the depiction you get in the media. And then you take me around and it's quite incredibly beautiful. And it's really interesting. So I found that out early on. I hope the book can convey some of that, the wonders of Oakland alongside the issues that Oakland faces, because Oakland has faced a lot of issues. It's a second city. Which is a very interesting type of development, to grow up in a region in which there is a dominant city and you're trying to compete with that dominant city, San Francisco being the dominant city. Nowadays, Silicon Valley has kind of overshadowed both Oakland and San Francisco. So Oakland is almost a tertiary place within the Bay Area in terms of power and economics. But being a second city makes it a very interesting place. It's a very interesting story because, second cities, second people in second place tend to strive harder. They want to win, they want to be on top. And so Oakland has really tried to do that. And it's really fascinating, from the late 19th century, from, the Transcontinental Railway touching down at Oakland Point all the way to now, there's been all these moments when Oakland has striven to, overtake San Francisco. Oakland leaders would say, "Oh, we have more land, more flat land. We have a much better climate. We're on the mainland of the United States. It's easier to get to Oakland." And all these things were true. And yet, as I talk about in the book, they're true, yet they also create new problems. The fact that Oakland is easier to get to means that all the great highways leading to the east, south, go through Oakland. So we have a lot of highway miles in Oakland that don't necessarily serve Oakland all the time. They serve Bay Area residents. And same with the BART system, right? Oakland is the center of the BART system. But it only has 8 stations. And what troubles me in terms of that is that BART was completed in 1974. And all the additions to BART since 1974 have taken place in the suburbs. There's not a single mile of tracks in Oakland. nor have we gotten a light rail system in Oakland, any new light rail, which has happened in San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento, LA, Long Beach, San Diego. So we're the only large urban area, the East Bay, the inner East Bay, that hasn't had major transportation improvements, in what, close to 50 years now. So there's been a lot of positives in terms of our location and that huge mid-century development push for Oakland. But I think I set down the stage in terms of these kinds of issues to encourage people to think about what can happen in the future for Oakland in terms of transportation, which is a huge issue.
And I was thinking about that as well as you're speaking in terms of the early choices for transportation and the freeways, and probably even before that, and how that impacted our neighborhoods. So maybe, I know there's a lot to say about that, but maybe you want to, maybe start from the planning portion. What were people thinking to destroy so much of what was so beautiful?
I think being the second city and wanting to overtake San Francisco led Oakland business leaders. Remember, this was a Republican-dominated town with a white business establishment all through the 20th century till the 1970s, when the big era of development slowed down. So they were thinking San Francisco is in the 50s is turning from a working class to middle class city, from a blue collar and white collar city into a white collar city, right? The decisions made in the 1950s in San Francisco were to favor office development and tourism. And Oakland leaders, who were part of those decisions somewhat through the Bay Area Council, saw something similar for Oakland. They saw Oakland as a kind of command and control center for the East Bay. And they made some strange decisions. Like one strange decision was to encourage industrial relocation out of Oakland to suburban Alameda County. It doesn't sound logical at all, but they weren't thinking of the tax losses or the immediate employment losses or the difficulty for the increasingly large Black population to get out to white suburban Alameda County. They weren't thinking of any of those things. They were thinking of Oakland as this command and control center, whereby Oakland would have this big office downtown, and the port of Oakland would develop as it did, and we would be the kind of switching post instead of being an industrial center, right? And so I think, and that was modeled on what San Francisco was doing. And San Francisco succeeded. You look at what happened in San Francisco, Yerba Buena Center, you can debate whether it was a good idea or not, but it succeeded, right? Yerba Buena Center eliminated the old Skid Row, the old Sailors District, and created a glittering museum, hotel, convention district. The Golden Gateway Embarcadero Center did something similar with the Produce District. They eliminated an old working class district right next to downtown and put in a high-rise office district and a high-rise upper income residential district. Oakland tried something similar and failed. They created the Acorn redevelopment in West Oakland with the intention of making it a middle class mixed white and Black neighborhood in what was a very poor Black neighborhood. And they ended up displacing a lot of people and not drawing the middle class or the whites to that area. It didn't last. It didn't last. Similarly with Civic Center and with City Center downtown in the 60s, Oakland tore out 18 entire blocks in the core of the city, right? And they wanted to make enormous shopping mall, 5 anchor stores. They wanted a whole set of office towers around it. Didn't happen. Sat vacant for years and years. The office tower, only 2 were built initially, the Wells Fargo and Clorox buildings right on Broadway. The shopping mall never happened. The 980 freeway was built because of that plan, to get people from the suburbs into that shopping mall directly. The freeway is going to have ramps directly into the shopping mall, and so people would never have to walk on Oakland streets. So this is an example of, there was a mindset, I'd say, in the 50s and 60s, as industry started to falter in Oakland, as it was in San Francisco, to turn Oakland into a white collar office and tourism center. And you know, it wasn't looking at the population, it wasn't looking at the history at all. It was a little bit blind on those regards. And that's why we got, you know, 4 freeways. And San Francisco actually had a plan. We had plans for about 8 freeways. Oakland, we built about 4. San Francisco had plans for 10 and they built 2, barely, you know. So they revolted more dramatically, as did Berkeley, against freeways. Oakland didn't, because of that mindset again. The mindset, we need to be business oriented. We need to, you know, become larger. We need to do bold things, but the bold things that were happening often weren't benefiting a lot of the citizens of Oakland, and they certainly weren't benefiting, they weren't succeeding. You know, they weren't kind of meeting the kind of goals. The urban renewal plans just did not succeed the way the San Francisco ones did. The city did not transition. Maybe now in recent years, it's transitioning more in that regard. You're seeing a lot of residential development, market rate residential development downtown. You know, when Jerry Brown was elected mayor in '98, he wanted market rate because there hadn't been any market rate housing downtown in decades, or in the vicinity of downtown, almost none. So he was encouraging that kind of development because we hadn't had it. We've had it now. And that leads to a current debate, to what extent, you know, some people don't see that as benefiting everyone in Oakland. So yeah, there's been a lot, in ways, it really makes it a more interesting city because the extremes are more potent. You know, the disruptions are more, you know, pronounced, and the dreaming is larger, you know, and we're not this emerald city on 48 hills. I think it's 48 or 44 across the bay. You know, I lived a number of years in San Francisco too, and I love the city and I know it well, worked there. But Oakland, they're both really interesting cities in their own way.
You know, you touched a little bit earlier on the land. You know, what's so beautiful about Oakland, and so I'm really interested in how the city developed around this idea of land and purpose. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's almost. I mean, I live not that far from Lake Merritt, a little bit uphill from Lake Merritt. And I like to think that I live in one of the most blessed places on the planet. Because, you know, I'm in California, which, you know, and I'm in this spot in California that's not too hot, not too cold, right across from the bay, but we're not as foggy and cold as San Francisco in the summer. Lake Merritt is part of the bay, right? And Lake Merritt is an estuary. It's really not a lake. There was an attempt to make it into a lake, right, by damming it in Mayor. That's why it's named after the old mayor Samuel Merritt. But so it's this wonderful location, you know, the nexus of the bay. It's the furthest point Lake Merritt is that goes inland from the bay, the furthest inland area. So it's a beautiful, beautiful natural landscape. And in fact, when Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park and Prospect Park in New York City, he also designed Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland. And when he came out here to design Mountain View Cemetery, he was struck by something about the East Bay that he didn't find in New York or elsewhere. He said he was struck by how from the hills, there are all these creeks that flow down to the bay. And they create these changing environments from high canyons to alluvial. They flow through alluvial fans, and then they kind of end up in marshland along the bay. And he came up with this idea that, wow, if we're going to have open spaces in Oakland, the open spaces in Oakland should kind of parallel those riparian networks, right? They should, and he came up, so he set this model, right? This idea in the 1860s. And then Charles Mulford Robinson, a city beautiful planner, came to Oakland in the early 20th century and capitalized on Olmsted's idea and said, look, what Oakland should do is create a great park from Lake Merritt all the way up through the canyons, up to the top, up to the redwoods, that you could walk essentially from the bay environment all the way up to the high peaks and go through all the different environments. And this park was going to have it was called Wildwood Park. It was going to have anywhere from 350 to 600 acres. It was going to be at the head of the lake. It would have encompassed Haddon Heights on the heights above the lake, as well as all the Trestle Glen, Crocker Highlands, up through Diamond Canyon, et cetera. It didn't happen. Probably one of the great planning failures in Oakland. Why didn't it happen? It didn't happen for a couple of reasons. And one of them was that Oakland was so beautiful and had so much naturally park-like land that the citizens didn't realize that could all be lost quickly. They didn't kind of think, oh my God, you know, if you know, that we're talking about the teens now. This is when the park idea fell apart by 1920. They didn't realize, oh my God, by 1940, by 1950, all this land is going to be gone, and we're not going to have a Golden Gate Park in Oakland, and we don't. You know, we have one of the best regional park systems in the country, the East Bay Regional Parks, but they're harder to get to, right? You have to drive all the way up to the hills. There are a couple by the shoreline now, but we don't have a kind of easy accessible park. So if you go to Lake Merritt on the weekend and it's, you know, they close off roads now because it's too crowded, because everyone wants a big central park. Lake Merritt is too small to accommodate that. And so we have that conundrum, and it's impossible to find the land now. So I think it was this embarrassment of riches that led people to not understand that those riches could be lost. It was also a kind of a pro-business attitude on the longest standing mayor in Oakland, Mayor Davey, who was mayor for something close to 20 years. And Mayor Daley was like, no public money for almost anything that doesn't work for business. And that was an Oakland attitude among the Republican business class, that, you know, they liked highways because they thought highways, you know, improved business. They didn't like public housing because that was for the poor, and they didn't care about that. So they built very little public housing and a lot of highways. They liked urban renewal because you could turn poor neighborhoods into wealthier neighborhoods. They liked that, even though that didn't end up happening, as I said. So there was a combination of a really beautiful city that didn't fully understand that beauty could be compromised by excessive development over time, and a business class that was trying to compete with San Francisco, outdo San Francisco, and willing to do things that didn't make sense in the long term.
Yeah, it's so interesting to talk about that now. And one of the big changes that's been happening is around zoning, right? And that speaks to the amount of land we have and about changing neighborhoods. What would that be like? And then you had also mentioned in another interview that you had done about changing migration patterns. So that's a whole lot of words and like 3 different, you know, areas. But let's just talk about zoning. What was happening, what is happening, and what you think the impact will be.
Okay, if you start historically, Oakland didn't have a zoning plan until the early 1930s. And from that point on, you know, they started with the typical, you know, a few categories, right? Residential, commercial, industrial, and then heavy industrial. And then they broadened it into many, many more categories, multiple residences, 2 residences, et cetera. So they developed a complex zoning plan. You know, what zoning is really about minimizing conflict, right? And so, and yet, if you look at the Oakland zoning, you know, as it developed historically, it was, and the reasons for it all the way into the late 20th century, it was about, well, we have a nice residential area. We don't want any stores here, so we're going to zone out commercial. We don't want parking lots in our area, so we're going to zone out parking lots, right? And the wealthy classes, those who live in the lower hills and the upper hills, basically zoned their districts to be solely residential with very little commercial, no industry, on the one hand. In the flatlands along the waterfront and industrial railroad corridors where the industry was, they zoned a lot of land that was residential industrial. So a lot of the poorer Oakland residents, West Oakland, for instance, parts of North Oakland, parts of East Oakland, these were residential areas that were zoned industrial, right? You could do most anything in those residential areas, whereas the wealthier living in residential areas where you can't do almost anything. And those wealthy areas stayed exactly as they are. If you want to go around Oakland and see what has not changed, go to Piedmont, which is not Oakland, but it exemplifies these tendencies. It's surrounded by Oakland, but go to the areas around Piedmont, go to the other, Upper Rockridge. These neighborhoods looked very similar to the way they looked 100 years ago, with minor changes. And then you go to the industrial flats and you see you talk about disruption, right? Oakland zoning also zoned a lot of land commercial along the corridors, along the big streetcar lines. Much more than you could develop. There was no need for all that commercial space, but they zoned it because they wanted things to be built up more. So there was this mentality of growth. And then, by the 1980s, you have the reverse, or even by the 70s, you start getting in the wealthier parts of the city, like Rockridge, no, we're going to downzone because we don't want, apartment buildings in our neighborhood, or in the hills when they would want to put apartments in the hills. You had neighbors fighting them and reducing the amount of apartments and increasing the number of single family homes. This is a California phenomenon, right? The NIMBY, right? People who want their neighborhoods to stay very similar, who don't want increased traffic, they don't want shadowing from taller buildings, et cetera. So Oakland went from a kind of let's build to a more, which sensible at first it sounded, let's be more restrictive and keep our neighborhoods, protect them, but that overdid it. So we don't have enough housing, right? And that, if you start to talk about one of the biggest, other than transportation, the other big problem people talk about is housing, right? There's not enough affordable housing in Oakland. There's not enough housing for the poor. There's not enough housing for the middle class. Really, it's only the top 10% that can afford market rate housing in Oakland now. So how did that situation develop? Well, it developed because, one, we didn't build a lot of public housing. Then we stopped building it altogether by the early 70s. Then in the late 90s and early 2000s, we redid a lot of the housing projects and reduced the number of units. So that reservoir is smaller than it was. Two, Oakland went in the early 60s and afterward on a kind of war against residential hotels downtown, in the downtown area. Let's get rid of all the residential hotels because those are, single occupancy hotels with, poor men, and they're unsightly and they don't accord with the image of this white collar office city. So, and that was a huge reservoir of housing for the poor, huge, the residential hotels. So public housing, residential hotels, and then not building a lot, not building enough density. And you add those three in terms of supply, and then you look at the demand created when psychiatric hospitals, state hospitals were closed, starting in the 80s. And you end up with this, we don't have enough supply, we have a tremendous demand. And then we have the whole Silicon Valley boom with all these really high paying jobs, people moving from the West Bay to the East Bay. You add all those factors together and you start to understand why we have a tremendous housing crisis. So
Well, which leads me to, there is some conversation now about the ballpark, right? So there's the question of how do we look at the old Coliseum, which is right on a freeway, by the way, what's kind of exciting opportunities and problems are there? And then talking about at the same time Howard Terminal in West Oakland, and which I don't know if that was ever residential, but they certainly are trying to talk about mixed use and residential there. So maybe what about that? How are those issues connected? Are they separate? What do you think from a built environment standpoint?
Well, I think it would be really tragic to lose the Oakland Athletics. The Raiders went to Las Vegas. The Warriors went across the bay. We're down to one major league franchise. At one point in the 1960s, there were four. We actually had the NHL Seals for a little while in Oakland. Wow. So we've had four major league franchises, and that's done a lot for the city, and a lot of people care about that. And so to go to zero would be really sad. We're losing a lot of institutions. Mills College almost went under. My school is moving to San Francisco. The Oakland Tribune is gone. So I'm all for trying to keep the institutions in Oakland, and the A's are one of them. So I think that, the direction that baseball has gone in, if you look at baseball since the Baltimore Orioles built Camden Yards about 20 years ago, They've gone toward ballparks that are nearer to the downtown, that are bundled with hotels and residential and other tourist attractions. The Howard Terminal is right next to Jack London Square. It's walking distance from downtown. So it fits that model. And the A's want to do it there. I think I see no reason why it can't be done there. The Port is no longer using it as a container location. So I don't understand why there isn't a stronger push to get that done, to make sure that happens. What's great about that also is it opens up the whole Coliseum site for new development. We could get a really large city park there. We could get some office and residential development there. We keep the arena as for concerts and sporting events. We turn the Coliseum in. There's been a nice suggestion to turn it into to get rid of most of the seating and turn it into a baseball park with like 5,000 seats, and it can be used by high schools and just anyone. So that the Coliseum site is kind of smoldering. It's nothing much happening there now. So I think it's a win-win to put the A's at the Howard Terminal and redevelop the Coliseum site.
Mitchell, I wish we had more time. There's so much to cover. I want to encourage people to buy his book. You can find it on Amazon and probably in local bookstores everywhere. It's UC University Press.
Here it is. The
beautiful cover. And I know that for people who want to hear more, that you have another interview coming up with Spur. Do you know when that is?
Yeah, that's on Tuesday. That's apparently sold out. It's outdoors, so they can only admit so many. But there is on a week from tonight, the Oakland Public Library I'm giving a lecture for them. So I think they can take over 200 people. So Oakland Public, go on the Oakland Public Library site, and then there are other ones. There's more going to happen afterwards.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. It's such a pleasure. And I hope we'll talk again.
Yes.
In the future.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And I appreciate what the good work your organization is doing.
Thank you. Thank you. So now, thank you. And I need to move on for this moment, is to say that we're going to be coming up with a conversation that I taped earlier this week on Monday with Mayor Libby Schaaf. And let's just go over to her now. Welcome, Mayor Schaaf. Thank you so much for joining us at our Gather Together event in support of Rebuilding Together Oakland East Bay. I wanted to start and go back to an earlier moment in your time as mayor when you said, I want to see cranes. So you saw them. So tell us, how has that been going? Where has that brought us so far today?
Well, it's with mixed emotions, because on one hand, I look up at the skyline and it's exciting to see the growth in Oakland. It's exciting to see that we are building housing. And let's be clear, the housing crisis in the Bay Area is not only driven by cost and tenant protections, it's also driven by supply. We know that we have not been building enough housing for the job growth that has happened in the Bay Area. I mean, the misbalance is something like 13 jobs for every one new unit of housing. And that's been happening year after year. So every time I see a new housing unit go up, I celebrate, but that celebration cannot really be worthy when you look at the streets, when you look down below that skyline and see our children, our elders, our brothers, our sisters living in their cars, living on the sidewalks, living under our freeway underpasses. It is just a moral outrage that our great democracy and our extremely wealthy region allows anyone to go to bed at night without a roof over their heads.
Yes, I live in Oakland, as well as all of my colleagues here, and we do see really the devastation that's on the street. What we do here at Rebuilding Together Oakland, of course, is that we work with low-income homeowners. So these are seniors, veterans, people that are mobility challenged, that have their homes, that own their homes. And one of the things that I find myself saying more and more frequently is, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that is something that we used to say, going even back in time, that we used to say about homelessness. But now we're saying this about the folks that live in their homes. So I guess my question to you is, there isn't much in the way of support to help these folks. And we find that Rebuilding Together, Oakland East Bay, that we really become the safety net for that. So where are the dollars? Where is the support for this work?
Well, Lisa, thank you for highlighting the problem of invisibility. I think there are two things that it's so important that everyone knows about, specifically homelessness in Oakland. And I know Rebuilding Together Oakland has not always been seen as like a homelessness organization, but I want people to actually see that you are actually playing an incredibly critical role in our fight against homelessness for two reasons. One, the largest increase that we've seen in first-time homeless, people experiencing homelessness for the first time in their lives, is in our seniors. People over 50 now make up more than half of the first-time homeless. That is a huge demographic shift. And I think it's related to another piece of the puzzle. I think traditionally, when people have looked at unsheltered folks on the street in their neighborhood, for a long time we've believed that that problem has been driven, and it is in part by mental health, addiction, illness, and these are obviously factors. But pure poverty is what has driven the increase. And I wouldn't even call it an increase, I'd call it an explosion in the amount of homelessness that we are seeing right now in Oakland. And one interesting anecdote, and I hope people look forward to reading this series, the Chronicle has been doing an in-depth study of 4 individuals, following them, that are homeless, unsheltered homeless in Oakland. All 4 of them were homeowners. All 4 owned homes right here in our community. And today they're unsheltered homeless. And so there is a huge connection that people haven't traditionally thought about when they see the homeless, that this person could have ever been a homeowner. Increasingly, that is not the case. And Rebuilding Together Oakland is what allows people not only to age in dignity and safety, but literally to keep the roof over their head. I cannot tell you how much I am seeing that today, and I cannot tell you how thankful I am for your partnership, what you do. And the last thing, Lisa, you asked me about money. I think it's really important that donors out there know now is the time that Rebuilding Together needs you more than ever, because so much of the focus right now is on what we call ELI housing. It's extremely low income individuals, but this is always going to be rental housing. And the conversation has shifted away from home ownership. It has shifted away from keeping our elders in their homes where they can age in dignity and with the security of knowing that that home that they love, that is theirs, will still remain over their heads. And so Rebuilding Together is playing such a critical role right now that honestly, governmental or public funding has not caught up to yet. And that is why your donors are so, so important.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf. I couldn't have asked for a more eloquent statement from you and support for the work that we do. I want to thank you again for being with us, and just wishing you all the best in the challenging work you have ahead.
Well, Lisa, thank you for this opportunity. I speak to you not just as the mayor of Oakland and someone who's passionate and involved on both the state and national level around ending homelessness and housing insecurity, but I've had the joy of getting splattered with paint, of getting dirt under my fingernails, and of actually seeing homeowners just having tears of gratitude fall down their faces, because for many years I've had just the honor of not just supporting Rebuilding Together Oakland, but actually being a volunteer. So I really speak from the bottom of my heart when I say how important your organization is and how critical it is that people support you, especially right now. Thank you so much. Everyone, please give generously to Rebuilding Together Oakland. This is what we can do to keep roofs over our neighbors' heads.
Thank you so very much, Mayor Schaaf.
And with that, I just want to take this opportunity to wrap up and thank everybody who helped prepare for and participate in today's event. That includes our executive director, Lisa Malul, and our program coordinator, Sonia Berrigan, and our program manager, Lucy Jonova. And again, thank you to Mitchell Schwarzer for speaking today. It was a fascinating talk and really enjoyable and informative. And again, please go out and buy a copy of Hellatown. Thanks to all of my fellow Rebuilding Together Oakland board members. I have the pleasure of serving with you, and you make a part of this the enjoyable experience that it is. Finally, I want to thank all of you who joined us today for this program. Your participation and your support of Rebuilding Together Oakland is essential, and it's our lifeblood. So with that, thank you again, and I guess we'll adjourn.